All right. This is interview and episode number 6 of the ongoing 2021 Grand Lodge Candidate Series. This time, with the fanciest background so far, we've got Right Worshipful Brother Edward Denbeight. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for asking me.
So we will, this is my 6th interview. I've been posting them every day, so anybody watching these has heard these caveats already, but I'll go through them quickly as a motorcycle goes by. All opinions expressed are my own. They don't represent Grand Lodge or Windsor Masonic Temple. This is an open invite to any candidates who want to be on the podcast. Most I've managed to contact, but if I did not get in touch with you, my email is on the bottom of the screen. Just look down and get in touch with me, and you're welcome to be on the show. This isn't an endorsement for any candidate or anything like that, but this is a chance to get to know them a little bit better, in a longer form conversation than, a meet the candidate night, for example, will provide. And I have had the chance to meet the Right Worshipful Sir before at a few different events, but what sticks out of my mind most is coming down here for our 2017 Cornerstone ceremony.
Yes.
Which was a great time. Have you been back to Windsor or Essex District since, maybe for the Grand Master's reception?
Oh, I certainly was. That would have been in the, I guess, the spring of 2019.
That's right. Yeah, in Leamington.
That's correct. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, well, let's start with your Masonic history. What it is that brought you to Windsor in 2017, your position and your current candidacy.
Oh, well, that's a fairly full question.
You got time.
But anyway, I actually began to take an interest in Masonry while I was with the military in Europe. I was going to apply to a lodge there in the Black Forest, and I was going through that process, but I got transferred home back to Ottawa. So that put pay to that step. I finally did make contact with somebody, and I made application in 1986, I believe. So that was that. I went through the chairs. I went through the chairs slower than many, simply because I was being transferred around with the military. But I kept coming back to my mother lodge, and I finally became the master of my lodge in the year 2000. In 2013, I became the district secretary, and then there was a pause again, obviously. But then the gentleman who was going to become the Grand Master in 2017, most worshipful brother Todd approached me and asked me to be his Grand DFC, which I gratefully accepted. And
that's the Grand Director of Ceremonies.
Pardon me?
That's the Grand Director of Ceremonies, Grand DFC, for all the for the brethren. what was it like, just before you go on? You mentioned, it was an honor, but to be approached for such an important role, because basically you're the guy who is with the Grandmaster on all of his, so many of his Masonic trips and Masonic adventures. Um, just were you nervous when you got approached with that? Were you excited? I guess, how did you feel about taking on that responsibility?
A bit of both, to be frank. The the role is really quite ill defined. It's certainly not described to any extent in the book of Constitution, really. And this is a sort of a funny way of putting it out there, but it's more a role of uh, you're practically acting as the private secretary to the Grand Master, and to coin a military phrase, you act as his aide de camp as well when you're outside the office. You basically run his office. You run his. You do all pre-arrangements for him. Plan all of his trips. Um, the all of his arrangements, his travel. You coordinate hotels, act as driver. You plan the routes. It's a very logistical role, really.
How well did you know Most Worshipful Brother Paul Todd before you took on this position?
Well enough. I had known him for about 25 years at that point. Not, great friends, but of course through we belong to lodges in the same district, and of course I would cross paths with him quite often, really.
I think about it at the lodge level, or the district level, seeing the kind of connections and the growing connection that happens between a district secretary and a district deputy, just at the district level, because where there is one, there will always be the other. Organizing visits and organizing district events, or being present for those events. I can only imagine, you being the director of ceremonies and being, traveling with and, logistically working with the Most Worshipful Master. I can only imagine that, your relationship with them grew very strongly over that time. Just even hearing your stories, talking to you about, driving from Ottawa to Windsor to Northern Ontario. I'm sure there's quite the relationship between your families must have grown quite a bit during that time.
Oh, extremely so. And you, because you're spending a great deal of the time in the car, and you, of course, are exchanging views on everything, and going through a lot of issues that he is dealing with, of course. That's the other role that comes with being the Grand Director of Ceremonies, is the fact you're his confidant, really. You advise him in your own way, because he, of course, a Grand Master will always seek advice from many areas. And if you're in the car for 7 hours time, you've got to fill a good deal of air, if you will.
What are some of the memorable, I'm sure they were all, but do you have any particular memorable moments from those trips, either, the visitations or even the travel itself? Winters can be interesting here in Ontario. Any particularly interesting memories or stories?
Well, we had a great drive. Actually, the time I came and met you, we came and met you in Windsor for the laying of the cornerstone to the new said city hall. We actually drove down the day prior. We had been in Sault Ste. Marie, and we spent that entire day driving down through Michigan to Windsor. Got there at the end of the day, and then spent the night, and then of course dealt with the laying of the cornerstone the following day. After which we climbed in the car and drove 8 hours back to Ottawa. So, lots of times in the car. That particular trip was extremely enjoyable. In terms of bad weather trips, we had a few. I will say, the one that really stays in both our minds was we were at a lodge in Prince Edward County in Picton, actually. And it was in January. We were flying out the following day to Jamaica because the Grand Master belongs to a lodge in Jamaica. This was a combined, that was an excuse for going, but we chose to go on take a winter break as well. There were a number of Masons on the trip, but all that to say, we and I will add that we did this thing completely on our own dime. No Grand Lodge was not charged for this trip at all. So the brethren can rest assured we weren't flying around to a summer spot on the dime of Grand Lodge. But anyway, we left the lodge in Trenton about 9 p.m. and we in Picton, and then drove to to Pearson Airport, and we went through the worst weather that we had gone through, I'm sure, in the entire 2 years. Torrential rain, driving snow. When we got to Whitby and we pulled north onto the toll road, the 412 and the 407, the fog was so bad that the only way we found our way along was by seeing the tops of the reflectors along the roadside. So effectively, we were on a 4-lane highway going 30 an hour. So that was a nightmare trip, but obviously burned into my psyche, if you will.
At least you got, Jamaica after the fact. Was the flight delayed with that weather, or did you still make it to Jamaica as scheduled?
We made it there. I mean, we were going to Toronto, spent the night in a hotel, and then we flew out the next day.
how important, and this is something I've discussed pretty frequently with other guests and even a few candidates, but this discussion really brings up the importance of travel in a Masonic career, whether it's, it could even be traveling within your district or even within your temple. In the case of Windsor, we have 7 lodges meeting in one temple. So traveling is as simple as, instead of going to temple on Thursday night, you go on the Thursday for your lodge and then Friday to visit another lodge. How important is traveling, do you think, for a Mason in his Masonic career?
Oh, it's tremendously important. I mean, you can, there are those who can happily just attend their own lodge and spend their entire career just doing that, and perhaps going to a close by lodge, but you're really not garnering the benefit that you should. It's the opportunity to travel to a different lodge, to a different district, to see how there's things are the same, but they're slightly different, of course. Every district and lodge has its own character and its own flavor. I think in terms of the holistic experience, travel is extremely key.
And, excuse me, as I'm choking. Yeah. This question could apply to your current situation as being a candidate for Grand Lodge. This could apply to when you were offered the role of Director of Ceremonies, or even, the various Masonic milestones that you have taken, to a Mason who is considering a position of responsibility or authority within the craft, but who are kind of experiencing excitement combined with nervousness about it. What advice would you have for them about how to proceed and how to take on responsibility in the craft?
Well, pardon me, I was coming from a military background from the first time I joined. I spent the vast majority of my career in the military, so taking responsibility for things was not unique in that way. I found that every step I took was a building block, really, and the experience I gained along the route only served to support me in the new tasks I took on. So from that standpoint, my role as the district secretary really was key to my success in the role of the Grand Director of Ceremonies. In that, it's a great deal of administration, of course, but you're just doing it on a grander scale, a more strategic scale, if you will.
And I guess that is a good word for, a former military man, but is a good question for a candidate and for Grand Lodge. you know, the strategic plan or strategy, what do you think, or what do you see as some, possible strategies for Grand Lodge and for Freemasonry moving forward to either grow the craft or stabilize the craft, 2021 and beyond?
Well, I feel that the Grand Lodge needs and does present broad policy framework and develops programs and resources which assist the lodges and the districts to get on with things and to prosper. At the same time, I said this in the meet and greet. At the same time, I feel that the districts and the lodges need to run their own show. And because that comes back to what I was saying about how Grand Lodge provides the policy framework. And insofar as a lodge and a district can operate within those broad boundaries and guidelines, they need to run their own show. The second thing for me, and the key, I believe, for the next 2 years at least, is going to be the engagement, if you will, of the brethren we already have. Speaking for myself, I know that of course the taking in of new brethren, through the application process, of course, is extremely important and always will be. But I think right now we have a lot of members who we already have, who are feeling adrift and unattached, if you will, because of the problems that the pandemic has imposed upon us. We can't meet. It's hard to speak except by phone or by Zoom. And so I think many of them, particularly the older gents, are wondering if they still have a place and a role. So from that standpoint, I think over the next 2 years at least, I believe we will need to focus on that issue, since these guys are all a known value to us, and we owe it to them and to ourselves to renew their engagement, if you will.
To what extent do you think, you mentioned brothers feeling adrift or disengaged from, well, to what extent do you think it's that brothers or even men in general feel disengaged from Freemasonry and the craft? Or do you think it's more, to what extent is it more that you're just feeling adrift or unattached from life as a whole? There are all sorts of, recently books and studies on these questions of, young men in particular, feeling a lack of connection to society or feeling a lack of purpose. And do you think that that is slowly making its way into Freemasonry? Or do you think, Freemasonry could offer a sense of purpose and meaning to men, even young men who perhaps are looking for it and not finding it in other areas?
I think that is true. I think it does offer that role to them. I think many younger people now, they spend a great deal of more time on a platform like we're on now, or they're just absorbed in the internet. And many chaps who come to my lodge, at least the younger guys, have said to me that they're looking for companionship, if you will, and a sense of belonging. They work at home. They hardly speak to anyone in real life, if you will, in the same room with them, and they're looking for that sense of community that I think the lodge can offer them in spades, really.
And how do you think, what would be the strategies by which Freemasonry can offer those things? Or more, and this is the thing I just talked about with my last interview, the, communicating those things. You will occasionally hear brothers talk about, why do I have to, what's the point of me being at a business meeting, or what's the point of, going through the minutes or whatever it is. I guess, how does Freemasonry communicate the purpose of it and the benefits to either maybe newer members or even those older members who feel a bit disengaged? We want to get them back out.
I think it's more of a leadership by example, really, particularly with newer members. It's to me, it's always been a case of getting them involved as quickly as we can. And allow them to feel that they're part of the team. Don't just let them sit there and watch a degree while they're waiting for their own next degree. You either get them involved in the degree that they're already qualified in, and you get them directly involved in projects that the lodge is involved in, be it committee work or other things. As soon as someone becomes part of the framework, if you will, I think they start to take ownership of the role and the institution, if you will.
To what extent? So the idea of ownership of whether it be a lodge, of a temple, or feeling like you are part of the thing and you have a stake in it. I interviewed some brethren from Massachusetts, and they mentioned that in their application, one of the questions they ask an applicant is, what can you contribute to us? Which I thought was a really interesting a question. It's not what I've seen on other applications, but it's this idea of figuring out the skills that somebody is coming into in Freemasonry, with the skills somebody has that they bring into Freemasonry, and how those can be applied to the craft. Even if it's an electrician, coming in, they can do some work on the Masonic Temple if it needs some assistance. Right. And you touched on that a little bit with your military background. Having that background gave you knowledge and experience and comfort in taking on roles of responsibility within the craft.
Very much so. And the other thing for me, of course, is the fact I have a speech impediment. That has always presented a challenge to me in many ways, both in and out of the craft. Obviously, I'm with a speech impediment. The chance of me being a star in ritual work is slim to nil, really. Because my delivery is often stymied, if you will. But on the other hand, I come from the military, so during the course of a degree, in terms of floor work, I'm quite smooth. I feel at least. So you come in knowing what your or at least one should know what your strong points and what your weak points are. You capitalize on one and work to improve the other, if you will.
I've always thought, and I never did it as a worshipful master, but it's something I would love to see, is bringing in a couple of military personnel to a lodge. They don't have to be Masons. It can be like an education night to discuss or have the guys practice floor work, because nothing can be more distracting than, in a degree, seeing a deacon, with the candidate or with whoever it is, or even bringing people into lodge and just seeing them stumbling over their feet or tripping or not being able to walk in unison, versus seeing a uniform march and uniform steps. It's a little thing, but it adds, and turning on 90 degrees, it adds so much to a degree.
Very much so. In fact, I've often said when I'm providing some guidance in my own lodge, I said, we always speak about how during a degree, the candidate is the most important guy there, and that's all very true. But in terms of the execution of the degree itself, the deacon is the star of the show, without doubt. Because if he is unsure of himself, or if he runs off the rails and turns the wrong way, the whole thing will grind to a halt.
I have said that many times. I agree completely. I always say, if you ask a brand new Mason, the most important officer in the lodge, he'll probably say the worshipful master. And if you ask a more experienced Mason, he might say the secretary. But in my opinion, the most important officer is a deacon because of the role he plays in a candidate's Masonic journey, right? Being the guide, especially at the start. Um, I always told deacons, it really should be viewed as a privilege, the chance to, you are in effect, metaphorically or otherwise, responsible for the safety and well-being of the candidate, of the, at that point, the applicant. And that is such an important role. And like you said, a calm and, prepared deacon can make all the difference, both for the lodge and watching a degree and performing the degree, but also for the candidate. You'll see, a nervous deacon equates with a nervous candidate, and vice versa. A calm professional deacon results in a calm and relaxed candidate.
Yeah, very much so. And in the long run, it becomes a far more enjoyable experience for the candidate, of course. Most worshipful brother Mumby, who lives up around where I am here, he at one time ran the RCMP degree team. They've broken up now, but they were an absolute spectacle to watch. Everything was so completely precise, not a foot out of place, not a word out of place. It was absolutely a wonder to watch.
And if I could give my advice for any deacons watching this, is as you're getting back into the swing of things, is it's a little thing, and it's not original to me. I saw a deacon do this. I was during a visitation, but it always struck with me is always maintain contact with the candidate.
Yeah.
So, because there are times when, when the candidate is moving, it's, the deacon understands to guide the candidate, to hold the candidate. But there are times when a candidate will not be moving, but will be kneeling or steady or whatever it is. If the candidate's kneeling, put a hand on his shoulder. If the candidate is stopped in front of an officer, again, put a hand on the shoulder, or keep a hold of the hand. Even when the candidate is interacting with the warden, you can still hold on to a shoulder. It's a little thing, but always maintain contact with that applicant or with that candidate.
Yeah, the sense of reassurance that comes with that is extremely important.
How nervous were you, or apprehensive, or whatever the word is, as it related to your speech impediment in Freemasonry, either when you're going into the position of worshipful master or just joining the lodge, up to your time as director of ceremonies? Did you have any apprehension about that?
Lots, a lot, a great deal. And but I remember when I first joined, my sponsors were extremely reassuring. One of my sponsors was in the military as well. That's how I met him. And he spent a great deal of time with me to coach me, if you will, on the things I had to learn. He gave me a lot of uh, guidance, if you will, in that how you he explained to me, break things up into segments, break a sentence into phrases, sort of work your way through it, always breathe correctly. Certainly in my role as the grand director's ceremonies, whenever we were at banquets and whatnot, it always fell to me to do the introductions of Grand Lodge officers and their uh, escorts when they were there. So that was always a challenge with every night I went out, and you get used to it to a certain degree, but every day is a work in progress when you're when you have a speech impediment, for sure.
Talk about breathing, because that is another one of those things that it's funny. For me, it was my time in professional wrestling school that impressed upon me the importance of breath. But then I brought it to my Masonic lodges. Whenever we were in a drill, I'm sure you can probably have some similar experiences in the military. You're at your whatever it is, however many push-ups or dips or going off the ropes, whatever it is, you're at a point where you're tired, and the coach would always yell, breathe. And sometimes if we weren't, he would, yell breathe on purpose. But the recognition that when the body or the mind or some combination is stressed, we really do have a tendency to stop breathing properly or stop breathing well. And it was, after that, I went back to lodge, and then I noticed the times that nerves would go into a candidate, nerves would go into somebody doing a part in a degree, and you'd realize they're not breathing.
Mhm.
I remember this one time, this one guy nearly passed out because it was his first time doing a charge, and he was so nervous. He did this thing where he took a breath and he just started talking, and you could see him get harder and harder trying to get the words out, until eventually he had to stop mid-word and do one of those take a huge breath in.
Yep.
And ever since then, I've always tried to impress, a piece of advice I'd give to anybody looking at ritual work and being nervous is just breathe. You have no idea how easy it is to stop breathing when you find yourself stressed.
Oh, for sure. And for somebody with my affliction, it's a question of trying to remain as relaxed as you can. As well, for me, I feel I have to put people at ease with the fact I have a speech impediment. Uh, so I'll try to kind of, whenever I stand up to speak, I'll often start the whole thing out with a joke, particularly if the audience does not know me. If I'm in a new lodge somewhere, I'll explain to them that I suffer from a speech in pediment, and then my patent line is, so if I I warn them that if I start to repeat myself, I'm not especially doing it to emphasize the point. So I'll ask you just to bear with me as we move through this, and I'll try to get us through this sometime prior to breakfast, sort of thing.
It's a great technique. It's starting off with a joke is always a good, whatever the reason for it. It's a good way to put people at ease. But I think the great thing about your story, and you've managed to accomplish so much within the craft, and you've been of such a credit to the craft. Your presence in Windsor for the cornerstone ceremony, all your times at the different grandmasters ceremonies, I actually had another military guy on. He from Nashville, but he talked about, in the military, it's, the importance of adapt, improvise, and overcome. And, me, missing my legs, or yourself with a speech impediment, and still finding ways to, engage with the craft. It really is, there's nothing that is, in terms of physical or mental disabilities, whatever it is, there's nothing that precludes you from being a Mason. It's just about finding ways to adapt and improvise, and overcome those challenges.
Yes, and of course, knowing that you have a very, very supportive team around you whenever you're doing things. I've always found that there'll always be some guys who are sort of in any room that is waiting to see you fail. But the vast majority of guys are there absolutely with the objective to seeing you get through it in a successful fashion.
Yeah, and those people don't matter, right? Like you said, the vast majority of anybody in any group, well, they either don't care about you at all and have no opinion about you, or they want you to succeed, right? The number of people who actually have, negative desires is very much smaller than I think sometimes people realize. That might just have to do with the internet too nowadays, right? Negative comments and negative whatever it is tend to get far more views and far more traction than a more positive message sometimes.
Absolutely. So it's, I think with my with my background in both the military, the way I organize things, the way I take care of arrangements, if you will, plus my experiences as I've come through the craft, be it in the lodge, in the district, or at Grand Lodge itself. I feel I've seen the craft, at least in our jurisdiction, from those three levels. And I'm not saying I have all the answers. I certainly don't. But I think I have quite a good overview, if you will, what I like to call a strategic view of the issues that we face across the jurisdiction, because the problems you face in Windsor, or I face here in Eastern Ontario, could well be quite different from what the brethren face in Algoma. Up there, it's quite a different challenge in terms of weather, geography, time and space, that sort of thing.
To what extent do you think the problems, or how do I put this,
Or challenges?
or challenges, or do you think that, so moving forward, do you think that kind of COVID and the current pandemic have created or exacerbated problems in the craft that will continue past the pandemic? Or do you think, because there is obviously, issues and concerns around things like declining membership before COVID-19, and there's plenty of concerns pre-2020 that the Grand Lodge was looking at and dealing with, and that Most Worshipful Brother Paul Todd discussed numerous receptions, and I thought he had a lot of valuable insights And then, COVID comes along, and obviously that creates a whole new set of challenges. But I guess my question is, to what extent do you think we're going to have to deal with the ghost of the pandemic in years future, or do you think that those will go away and we'll be just back to the original problems, or do you think COVID exacerbated those initial concerns?
Well, I think the concerns were there, but the pandemic only served to put them into sharper focus, if you will. Certainly, the declining membership, the challenge of travel, all that sort of thing. For now, the pandemic as well, sort of brought on the problems that I talked about earlier. The sense of older members, or even somebody of your age or my age, feeling unattached and perhaps adrift. But the other thing I found with this whole thing is it really has proved how adaptable we can be. I have been saying that for a while now. Everybody has obviously come to it to accept and embrace, to a certain extent, the idea of doing work on a platform like we're on now. And that has really shown to me how resilient the craft can be, in terms of getting things done. In terms of a holdover from the times we're going through now, I think the use of Zoom will be an ongoing thing. We won't use it for as many things because, of course, you can't do ritual across Zoom, and there are things where you have to actually be in a room as a group. However, for things like a general purposes meeting, there's no real reason why you have to meet at the lodge building to do that. In fact, I would say the attendance of a GP meeting would increase, twofold by doing it on Zoom. So it offers a lot of chances from an administrative standpoint to get more engagement, if you will.
What do you think Freemasonry has to offer communities, cities, wherever it is a Masonic lodge or temple is located? We talk a lot about what it can offer its members and its membership, which I think is there's a lot that it offers. But I've also been trying to emphasize and focus on what a Masonic temple and lodge offers to the community in which it's located.
Mhm.
Even touching a little bit on before, that sense of stability, the idea that, especially at the start when people were very concerned about employment, jobs were unsure as businesses were being closed for COVID. People's health, they're unsure about that. Freemasonry and a Masonic lodge can provide a sense of stability and tradition and civility and all that type of stuff. So, Grand Lodge and lodges, what do they have to offer the communities in Ontario?
Well, of course, understanding that we're not, we always emphasize we're not a service club, but it does offer a focal point, particularly in smaller communities, from a social and well, from a social standpoint, be it in good times or bad times. When I was growing up, the small town where I lived, the the uh, dances that were organized by the lodge were really looked forward to by the community as a whole. I remember my mother talking about the lodge in the community where she was during World War II, and it was everybody sort of was really keen in those very dark times, looking forward to the sense of belonging that the lodge and its members brought to the community as a whole, whether you were a member of the lodge or not. So from that standpoint, I think lodges do, and the members, become part of the fabric of any community, and it can carry a very large influence, even on a low key setting, if you will.
I concur completely. That's something I've tried to emphasize with this podcast, with my videos about the Masonic Temple in Windsor, celebrating 100 years, right? It's a Masonic home, but it's a community home as well. And it's a place of community memories. And it represents something to a lot of people. At first glance, you'd say it represents something to them completely outside of the craft, because it represents their high school dance or their graduation, or getting, as we are in a pandemic, it represents them getting their polio vaccine or their flu shot. We've had many vaccination clinics here. And some would say, well, that's a separate thing from Masonry, but I don't consider it separate. I think it adds to the fabric of the craft that our Masonic temples and lodges are such a part of people's lives in so many different ways.
Sure. I mean, add to that things like a bursary being handed out. It's all a part of applying both our skills and our resources to make our community a more enjoyable place, a better life for everyone.
And everyone, right? That is a key word.
Yeah.
When you're talking about, the idea that Freemasonry is only for men, that's something I've also pushed back on. Freemasonry is a fraternity, but my mother, for example, had plenty of involvement over the years with the Freemasons at numerous events. Our learning center at the Masonic Temple is the chief executive is Christine Stanley. The ballroom manager is Joyce. Women. Freemasonry helps everybody, men and women, and it contributes to everyone's betterment.
Oh, for sure. And you think about an event like I and the Grand Master came down for, the laying of the cornerstone for the new city hall in Windsor. That was, to me at least, a big public show of how we contribute to the fabric of that community, and indeed the region and the province as a whole. events of that type.
I concur, and I would strongly encourage any Masons watching this to, it's a little bit of work. It's not crazy amount of work, and the benefits you get from a cornerstone ceremony or whatever the event is, it's well worth it to look into those things. And even, in a smaller town, maybe it doesn't have a city hall, but there's always a building, or there's always something happening that it may be worthwhile to see how Masons can contribute to that event.
Certainly, I believe the news clip from that event in 2000, that was 2017, I
Yeah.
believe. I believe that that's still on the Grand Lodge website now. I
It
may
was,
be wrong, but
I know it got shared a fair bit, that circulated around. It was a terrific time. And like I said, it's for a little bit of effort, there's a lot of rewards. So it's well worth looking at it. And now that we're all kind of stuck in lockdown, it might be an even better time to start planning some of these things, because eventually we'll get out of lockdown. And I've heard a lot of, well, this is a good question for you. I don't know if you put any thought into it. There's been a lot of talk that we may be ready to experience economically another roaring 20s. The bringing it back to 1918, when the Spanish flu ended, coupled with World War I ending, you saw, an economic boom period, the roaring 20s. And you also saw with that a really massive period of Masonic growth. So if the pundits and the stuff I'm seeing is correct, and we do experience another economic boom in the 2020s, do you expect or suspect we may see another period of Masonic growth in the coming years?
I suspect we'll see a bump for sure. In fact, one of the things I'm doing now, I'm on the Grand Lodge committee website, the committee for the website, and what I do on that is, you may know that when if somebody who is not a Mason is exploring our website, they can fill out a pro forma contact form to seek more info. Well, those will flip to me. They all come to me, and I will do a first take screen of them to ensure that it's a serious inquiry. And once I've done that, and I can tell that the guy is the right age and that sort of thing, I will send that on to a DD of whatever area the inquirer is in, and hand the file across to them to action, if you will. But all that I've got to say, since the pandemic has begun, I'm receiving on average 2 a day every day of the year. So, and of course you have to spread those around the the province, and some I get, of course, are from outside our jurisdiction here, and I can't we can't deal with them, so I'll hand them off to the Grand Lodge that's responsible for where that person made the the inquiry from. But again, there's plenty of interest out there, and that is only the ones I see that come from the Grand Lodge through the Grand Lodge website. I mean, there are more that where guys are approaching you and others like us in the normal fashion, if you will. And I think it comes back to the to a certain degree to the fact we're all feeling walled away here, and we're looking for some type of community, if you will.
I agree completely. I think that is a very that's a very accurate statement, that people are searching for a community and for a sense of belonging. And Freemasonry is definitely something that can provide that. Finishing up, this is something I've asked most candidates, and just for any Freemasons who are watching this, whether they're in Ontario and they have the opportunity to vote, or whatever their Grand Lodge jurisdiction is, as somebody who has taken on such an active role in the craft, I guess what would you say is why is it important, and what is the value of being active in these things, even for a new Mason? The value of attending Grand Lodge, and for a junior warden, the value of voting at Grand Lodge, and the value of either standing for a position, or even just taking the time to attend meet the candidate nights, and just the benefit to being active at the Grand Lodge level through either candidacy or voting or paying attention or attending for a Mason.
Oh, well, it's really tremendously important, because we're only as good as we make ourselves, insofar as the organization goes. So many times I've heard someone say, well, Grand Lodge is imposing something upon us. Well, the Constitution, as you know, is a living document, and a change to it will only be passed on the floor of Grand Lodge, if the amendment is voted for by the ones who are there. So if you want to influence the way Grand Lodge is, and the direction the fraternity is taking, you have to become involved, and you have to vote if you have the rank to vote, if you will. I'm really quite intrigued and quite excited by the prospect of the fact that we're going to vote electronically for the first time. And when you think about that, this will be the first time that essentially anybody who has the right to vote will be able to vote without going down to to sit in Grand Lodge itself. So I think many of the things that the reality of the fact that we had to go to a central place to vote in years past, and the resulting influence that circumstance had is effectively removed now, because you could sit in your underwear in front of your computer in Wawa and cast your vote the same as everyone else now. So
Now, in fairness, for all the listeners, right, the right professor is not saying that you have to wear your underwear to vote. He's just saying
no,
that's an option. If you would
yeah,
like to do
yeah.
it that way, you can.
And
There's,
I think everyone should think about that.
well, I mean, I haven't wore pants in about a year and a half now, so going quite strong with that. So it does, make your meetings more airy, at least more. You feel the breeze more.
I suppose so. But for over 2 years, the previous Grand Master, of course, as you said earlier, was moving around the province and giving his opinion of a vision of how things could change, and the not the least of which was the concept of voting electronically, and here we find ourselves in a case where we're actually going to do it.
Absolutely. And yeah, there's been that has been brought up in more than a few of these candidate interviews, is the electronic voting and the if there is a bright side to the terrible thing that is the pandemic, at least in Freemasonry, it is pushing us into electronic voting and thereby providing a chance for Wawa, Kenora, all these jurisdictions that it's just, and it's, the cost of getting from Kenora to Toronto is astronomical, right? It's airfare, it's time off of work, it's, you can't just go do it for the day, or you can, but it's not easy. And so this does, franchise a lot of votes that otherwise would not be cast.
Exactly. So I think everyone will be, I know I myself am curious to see about the, just in terms of the number who casts their vote, compared to, the average number that we got in the past number of years by doing it manually in the Royal York in Toronto.
Absolutely. I am too. I think it's going to be very interesting to see, and something I will for sure be talking about on this podcast, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Right, worshipful sir. I think the first time I did meet you was 2017, but I know I had a chance to meet you or see you again at several Grandmaster receptions and events since then. And I wish you the best luck in your candidacy. It was a pleasure when I first met you, and I really appreciated all that you did and the Grandmaster did, and the whole Cornerstone team to make that night special. And thank you for being here on the podcast.
Thank you very much for the invite, and I'll just close by saying that I feel that anyone who puts her name forward to run for office in Grand Lodge is deserving of your consideration.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
On that note, anybody who has put their name forward for Grand Lodge, if for whatever reason I wasn't able to contact you, I know I sent a few emails out that were got returned for whatever reason, invitation is open. Get in touch with me, because I would like to have every candidate appear on this podcast. And with that, like, subscribe, comment. I always forget to say that on this podcast. And thank you, Right Worshipful Sir.
Thank you very much.